Next on the list of our American KIAs is Captain John Sprague of the 36th Infantry Division. So my best friend died, and I buried him out at Restland. And I saw a 105 millimeter cannon in the middle of the cemetery, and I walked over to it because I'm interested in those type of things. And I noticed I was standing in the midst of a bunch of World War II graves. And as I walked over these graves, I saw September 13, 1943 on one of the graves. And I instantly knew that was the day of the big push at Salerno. So I took a picture of the grave. Sprague. Well, I know in Dallas there's a Sprague Field. I didn't make any connection to that. I just saw this tombstone. And months later, I was reading a book about World War II when I ran across information about Captain Sprague and his background and his death. Now, it's been several years since I read that, so I'm going to have to try and remember it. His father was the mayor of Dallas, and he was fighting with the 36th Infantry Division. I believe it was at Altavilla, Hill 424 at Salerno. And he jumped on a grenade, if I remember correctly, to save his enlisted men. And before he died, I remember him saying that he was talking about things about home, and then he said he was hungry and he wanted somebody to put on some ham and eggs or something kind of strange like that, and then he died. They talked about what a big guy he was, his big chest heaving for the last few times before he passed away. But just think of that, the mayor of Dallas' son, KIA at Salerno, Texas 36th Infantry Division. God bless their souls. I'd like to introduce you to Lieutenant Ellis Brewster. Now then, Brewster was an English gentleman whose family had moved over here, and if I recall correctly, he went to Ann Arbor in Michigan, and he was a crooner on the Bell telephone hour. Now I know about Lieutenant Brewster because of a very kind lady by the name of Helen Wall that I met. This Brewster was her brother-in-law. Helen's big sister married him. Helen's father was a colonel in a glider rider regiment, and if they trained at Camp Walters or Fort Walters out in Mineral Wells. And Brewster was in the glider regiment, and when he married the colonel's daughter, Helen's sister, the colonel would not allow his son-in-law to be in a glider rider regiment, so he made him transfer out. He was transferred into the 45th Infantry Division. Brewster was a lieutenant, and he made it all the way until April 4th, 1945. And on April 4th, 1945, Brewster was KIA. This is the telegram that was sent. Imagine receiving one of these about your child or your father or your brother. And I'm going to relate the story that Helen told me. Brewster was outside of Bamberg, Germany in early April 45. And he was an officer, and he had some wounded men that were in a barn. And Brewster went in to check on them. And as he went to exit the barn, one of the men said, "Be careful, there's a sniper out there." And when Brewster opened the door, the sniper shot him in the abdomen. They put him on a Jeep and they transported him to the rear, but he died on the Jeep underway. Now, Helen told me that she was at the house when the Western Union man came up with the telegram. And as her sister, the wife, wasn't there, and the mother wasn't there, the Western Union man said, "I'm going to take the telegram to the drugstore. Have your sister come collect it there." So when Helen's mother and sister got home, the three of them went to the drugstore. And Helen said the druggist took the mother and the daughter in the back, and Helen sat out front. And all of a sudden she heard a loud scream from her sister. And they had given her the telegram that Brewster had been killed. What a terrible tragedy. A month before the war's over. So in talking with Helen, she showed me a letter that Brewster's wife wrote to the regiment asking what happened. And they wrote back telling the story. She let me read it. And the guys said, don't worry, we took care of that sniper. Apparently they sent out a hunting party and hunted that sniper down. So that was probably the last round he ever shot. Helen and I became very good friends. I remember taking her and my mother to the cemetery so that Helen could see her husband's grave. Alan Wall, oddly enough, he was an armorer on a P-47 in the squadron that my big brother's scoutmaster was in. Morley, Charles Morley, P-47. And when I talked to Helen's husband and told him that I mentioned something about Morley, he said that the taste of Texas, he said, I helped arm that plane a few times. You know, it's a small world. And when you talk to these World War II vets, there's a lot of connections. So that's the tragic story of Brewster Ellis. May God rest his soul.